night has grown late. Thank you for still being here, in this familiar space. Last time we stopped as the mighty Five Elements mountain pressed down upon a proud soul, imprisoning Sun Wukong for 500 long years. The sound of the wind howling through the rock crevices was like a weary sigh of waiting. But destiny is a wondrous cycle. Tonight, the story will no longer be that sigh. We will travel back in time to a distant land to find the origin of another life. The one chosen by the Bodhisattva, the one who will begin a great journey, and is also the only one who can free the great sage. Now, let's set aside all worries. Find yourself a quiet little corner. Pull the blanket up a bit higher. Tonight's story may now begin. In the heart of the majestic Shanxi, where the imposing Qinling Mountains embrace the fertile Guangzhong Plain, there was a city that had become a legend, a name that echoed through 1,000 years of history, Chang'an. This was not just a capital, but the glorious heart of countless dynasties, from the Zhou, the Qin, the Han, to the dazzling peak under the great Tang dynasty. The land here seemed to have been blessed by the heavens. The territories of 3 prefectures converged, irrigated by 8 intermingling rivers, creating a fertile plain where flowers and ornamental plants of the 4 seasons showed off their colors like embroidered brocade, and boats bustled up and down the river like a ceaseless lifeblood. Our story begins in the 13th year of the Zhengguan era, under the reign of the enlightened monarch Emperor Taizong of Tang, Li Shimin. At that time, the world was at peace, and prosperity reigned. Tributes were brought from the 8 directions, and the 4 seas submitted with one heart. An atmosphere of peace and prosperity enveloped the entire empire. One early morning, in the magnificent Golden Chime Hall, as all civil and military officials were assembled, Chancellor Wei Zheng stepped forward and reported, "Your Majesty, the realm is now stable, and the people's hearts are at ease. I implore your Majesty to open the imperial examinations to select talented and virtuous individuals from all over to serve the nation." Emperor Taizong nodded, his eyes shining with satisfaction. He proclaimed, "Your report is most fitting." With a single word of approval, an edict was issued, and notices were sent to all prefectures and commanderies. The call crossed all boundaries, making no distinction between rich and poor, soldier or civilian. Anyone with literary talent and great ambition could come to Chang'an to take the examinations, to test their skills and aspirations. From the distant Haizhu, there was a scholar named Chen Guangrui, style name Yu. He was young and handsome, and 10 years of diligent study had forged in him an outstanding talent and a filial heart. Seeing the court's announcement, an indescribable joy rose in his heart. He hurried back home, knelt at the feet of his mother, Lady Jiang, and said, "Mother, the court is holding a grand examination. Though my talent is meager, I wish to go to the capital to try my luck. If I pass and bring honor to our family, it will all be thanks to the virtues of my parents." Lady Jiang looked at her son, her eyes filled with both pride and worry. "My son, you have toiled over the classics for 10 years. Now is the time for you to display your talent. But the road to the capital is long and far. You must be extremely careful. I hope you will soon have your name on the golden list, so that your mother at home can cease her anxious waiting." Chen Guangrui bowed deeply to his mother, and together with his young attendant, he packed his belongings, beginning the journey that would forever change his destiny. He did not know that ahead of him lay not only glory, but also a cruel fate that had already been set. After traveling over 1,000 miles, Guangrui finally reached the capital, Chang'an. At the examination hall, his prose was like pearls, his poetry like jade. Passing the provincial and metropolitan examinations, he advanced straight to the palace examination, facing the Son of Heaven himself. His 3 policy essays were not only erudite in knowledge but also profound in vision, which greatly pleased Emperor Taizong. The emperor immediately ranked him as the Zhuangyuan, the #1 scholar, the highest glory. Chen Guangrui was bestowed with a brocade robe and a scholar's cap, and he rode a white horse through the capital for 3 days to display his honor. The cheers and admiration of the people followed his every step. And then, as the procession passed by the residence of the current chancellor, Yin Kaishan, a soft, fragrant object fell from a high balcony, landing squarely on his Zhuangyuan cap. It was an embroidered ball. On that high balcony, the young lady Yin Wenjiao, with the boudoir name Mantang Jiao, the chancellor's only daughter, was choosing her own husband by casting the ball of destiny. Her beauty was such that it shamed the flowers and put the moon to flight. From above, she had clearly seen the new #1 scholar, a man of both talent and good looks. The young maiden's heart was stirred, and that ball, carrying with it an entire destiny, had chosen the right person. Celebratory music erupted. Maids rushed out, held the horse's reins, and respectfully invited the Zhuangyuan into the residence. The chancellor and his wife were as happy as if they had struck gold. Seeing that their son-in-law was both talented and handsome, they decided to hold the wedding that very night, uniting the gifted scholar and the beautiful lady. The ceremony was completed, and the new bride and groom walked side by side, a love affair that seemed arranged by the heavens. The next day, Emperor Taizong asked his court officials about an appointment for the new Zhuangyuan. Chancellor Wei Zheng reported, "The position of prefect of Jiangzhou is currently vacant. I believe the talents of Zhuangyuan Chen Guangrui are entirely worthy of this position." The emperor approved. Chen Guangrui thanked the emperor, then returned with his new wife to the chancellor's residence to discuss their departure to take up the post. They bowed to her parents, then prepared their carriage and began a new journey. It was then the 3rd month of the year. The spring scenery was beautiful, with gentle breezes through green willows and a soft drizzle on pink blossoms. The young couple was engrossed in the scenery, and it wasn't long before they arrived back at Guangrui's hometown. As soon as they entered the door, they rushed to kneel before Lady Zhang. Joy burst forth in the small house. He recounted everything, from passing the examination, being married to the chancellor's daughter, to being appointed prefect by the emperor. He asked to bring his mother with them to his new post so he could properly care for her. Lady Zhang was overjoyed and immediately packed her luggage. The whole family set out together. However, after a few days of travel, while stopping at an inn, Lady Zhang suddenly felt unwell. Her illness worsened, forcing the journey to a temporary halt. One morning, Guangrui saw a fishmonger walk by, carrying a carp with shimmering golden scales. He bought the fish, intending to cook it for his mother to nourish her. But as he held the fish in his hands, he was astonished to see it blink its eyes at him. A strange premonition arose in his heart. He knew this was no ordinary creature. Without a moment's hesitation, he took the fish to the nearby Hong River and gently released it back into the water. He had no idea that this act, born of kindness, had planted a seed of good karma, a favor that would later save his life. But his mother's illness did not improve, and the official duties of the court could not be delayed. In the end, they decided to leave Lady Zhang behind, renting a house for her and leaving enough money for her expenses, promising to return to get her when the weather cooled in the autumn. The couple tearfully bid farewell to his mother and continued their journey. A few days later, they arrived at the ferry crossing of the Hong River. 2 ferrymen, Liu Hong and Li Biao, eagerly invited them aboard. Little did they know, this was a gateway to hell. The moment Lady Yin stepped onto the boat, her devastating beauty stirred wicked thoughts in Liu Hong. A flame of cruel greed sparked in his eyes. He and Li Biao secretly plotted a horrific plan. They rowed the boat to a deserted stretch of the river. Waiting until midnight, when the world was shrouded in silence, they made their move. The young attendant was murdered. Chen Guangrui, a talented Zhuangyuan, had no time to resist. He was brutally beaten to death by them, and his body was thrown into the cold river. Lady Yin witnessed the horrifying scene, her heart shattering into pieces. She intended to throw herself into the river to die with her husband, but Liu Hong managed to stop her. He threatened her with a harsh voice, forcing her to submit. A weak woman, in the middle of a river, she could only swallow her tears and endure her tragic fate. Liu Hong, the murderer, put on the Zhuangyuan's robe and cap, held the imperial edict, and brazenly led Lady Yin towards Jiangzhou to usurp the position. At the bottom of the deep river, the body of Chen Guangrui was slowly sinking into the darkness. His destiny seemed to have ended. Glory, love, career, all vanished in one cruel night. The icy waters of the Hongjiang River swallowed the body of the new #1 scholar. The darkness and silence of the deep riverbed seemed to be the end of a promising life. But destiny, as it happens, always has unexpected turns. In the splendid underwater palace, the Dragon King of the Hong River was seated on his throne. Suddenly, a patrolling Yaksha demon returned to report the discovery of a murdered scholar's body. The Dragon King ordered the body to be brought to him. As soon as he saw Chen Guangrui's face, he immediately recognized the benefactor who had set him free days ago, when he had transformed into a golden carp to wander the mortal world. The Dragon King lamented, "This man saved me, and now he has been harmed by villains. It is only right that a debt of gratitude must be repaid." He immediately wrote a talisman and sent the Yaksha to the city god and the earth god of that region, requesting them to preserve Chen Guangrui's soul. The soul was brought to the underwater palace, and the Dragon King kindly asked for the full story. After hearing the tale of injustice, he declared, "You saved me, so how could I not save you? As for your body, I will use this appearance-fixing pearl to keep it intact and prevent it from decaying. Your soul shall remain here for now. Await the day your wrongful death is avenged and your family is reunited, and I will help you live again." Chen Guangrui, now just a soul, hurriedly bowed his head in thanks. His body was placed on a bed of jade ice, the pearl in his mouth, waiting for the day of his rebirth. Meanwhile, in the mortal world, another kind of hell was unfolding for Yin Wenjiao. She was forced to live with Liu Hong, the enemy who had murdered her husband. Every passing day was torment for her. She hated him to the marrow of her bones, wanting to skin him alive and eat his flesh to quench her anger. But she could not die. She had to live, because in her womb, the blood of Chen Guangrui, the only seed of her husband's life, was growing day by day. For this child, she had to endure the humiliation, pretend to submit, and hide the roaring tempest in her heart. Liu Hong, the murderer masquerading as an official, leisurely enjoyed a life of luxury and wealth in Jiangzhou. He had no idea that the silent wife by his side was nursing a hatred as deep as the sea. Time passed swiftly. One night, Lady Yin went into labor. In her pain and solitude, she fainted. Suddenly, in her delirium, she heard a voice by her ear. "Mantang Jiao, listen to my words. I am the South Pole Star Lord, acting on the orders of Guanyin Bodhisattva to grant you this son. He is no ordinary person. In the future, his fame will be renowned. But if Liu Hong finds out, he will surely kill him. You must protect your son with all your might. Your husband has been saved by the Dragon King. In the future, mother and son will meet again. Husband and wife will be reunited, and this injustice and grievance will surely be avenged. Remember my words." Just as the voice faded, Lady Yin awoke, drenched in sweat. Beside her, a handsome baby boy had been born. She held the child in her arms, tears streaming down her face. The immortal's words were both a comfort and a terrifying warning. just as predicted. When Liu Hong returned and saw the baby, he was filled with murderous intent and prepared to throw the child away. Lady Yin quickly pleaded, "It is already dark today. I beg you to wait until tomorrow morning to throw him in the river." Fortunately, early the next morning, Liu Hong had urgent official business and had to leave. Lady Yin knew this was her only chance. She could not let her child die at the hands of her enemy. It was better to set the child adrift on the river, entrusting him to fate. Perhaps there was a sliver of hope for survival. With that thought, she bit the tip of her finger, using the blood to write a letter, clearly stating the names and hometown of the parents and the entire injustice suffered by their family. To leave an indelible mark, she gently bit the little toe on the child's left foot until it bled. She took off her sweat and tear-soaked undergarment, carefully wrapped the baby in it, and then carried him to the riverbank. Looking at her tiny son, whose face was the very image of her late husband, her heart ached as if cut by a knife. She knelt, looked up to the heavens and prayed, "I beg the merciful heavens and Buddhas, please save my child." At that very moment, a wooden plank drifted to the shore as if it had heard her plea. Overjoyed, she placed her son on the plank and tied the blood letter securely to his chest. With all her remaining strength, she pushed the plank out into the current, watching it slowly drift away until it was out of sight. She stood there, her heart shattered, then staggered back home. The wooden plank, carrying the life and hope of a family line, floated downstream. It passed by many villages, and finally, as if guided by an invisible force, it drifted and became lodged right before the steps of the Jinshan Temple. The abbot of Jinshan Temple was Faming, a highly accomplished and enlightened monk. While meditating in his room, he suddenly heard the faint sound of a baby crying. Finding it strange, he went to investigate. Arriving at the riverbank, he witnessed an extraordinary sight, a newborn baby lying on a plank, wailing. He quickly rescued the baby. Seeing the blood letter on the child's chest, he opened it. After reading it, the abbot was utterly shocked and saddened by the tragic fate of this family. He looked at the baby, then at the vast river that had brought him here, and gave him the name Jiang Liu, meaning river float. He carefully stored the blood letter and the undergarment, then found a wet nurse to care for the unfortunate child. The child, now named Jiang Liu, was safe in the compassionate embrace of the Buddhist monastery. But would he one day learn the horrifying truth of his origins? And could such a monumental injustice ever be brought to light? The sun and moon flew by like a shuttle. In the blink of an eye, 18 years had passed. The child who had drifted on the river, Jiang Liu, was now a handsome young monk who had been given the Dharma name Xuanzang. Under the tutelage of Abbot Faming, Xuanzang not only became well versed in the scriptures, but also demonstrated an intelligence and kindness that surpassed others. He grew up in the serenity of the monastery, completely unaware of the storm that had devastated his family. But the tree wishes for calm, yet the wind will not cease. One spring day, while the young monks were discussing Buddhist teachings under a pine tree, a few malicious monks, who were jealous of Xuanzang's talent, began to mock him with insulting words. "You are just a fatherless, motherless nobody, of unknown name, a discarded beast. What talent do you have to lecture others?" Each word was like a dagger striking Xuanzang's innocent heart. For the first time in his life, the question of his origins erupted fiercely within him. He immediately went to the main hall, knelt before his master Faming, his eyes welling with tears. "Master, a person born between heaven and earth must have parents. I beg you with your compassion to tell me who I am, where my parents are." Seeing the pain and determination in his disciple's eyes, Abbot Faming knew that the time had come for the truth to be revealed. He sighed and led Xuanzang into his private quarters. From a precious wooden box, he carefully took out a faded undergarment and a letter, with characters blurred by time, characters written in blood. As each word of the blood letter was read aloud, Xuanzang's world collapsed. He learned that his father was the Zhuangyuan Chen Guangrui, and his mother was the Lady Yin Wenjiao. He learned of their dreamlike love story and his father's unjust death on the Hong River. He learned of the enemy Liu Hong and his mother's pain and silent endurance over the past 18 years. He fell to the ground sobbing, "If I do not avenge my parents, how can I be worthy of being called a man? Master, I must find my mother. I must take revenge." Abbot Faming helped him up and advised, "If you wish to find your mother, you must take these 2 items with you. Pretend to be a monk begging for alms and go to the official residence in Jiangzhou. That is how you might have a chance to meet your mother without alerting the villain." Xuanzang obeyed his master, took the keepsakes, and set off for Jiangzhou. It seemed the heavens had also arranged for their reunion, for the day he arrived was when Liu Hong was away. The night before, Lady Yin had dreamt of a waning moon becoming full again, and her heart was filled with thoughts of the son she had lost for 18 years. Hearing that a monk was begging for alms, she had him invited in. The moment she saw Xuanzang, her heart began to race. This figure, this face, this voice, they were the spitting image of her husband. She struggled to contain her emotions, dismissed all the servants, and then began to ask questions. When Xuanzang recounted the deep-seated grievance, spoke of a mother with the surname Yin and a father with the surname Chen, Lady Yin no longer had any doubt. But to be certain, she asked, "Do you have any token of proof?" Xuanzang immediately knelt and presented the undergarment and the blood letter. The moment Lady Yin saw them, tears streamed down her face like rain. Mother and son embraced, crying their fill for the pain and separation of 18 long years. But the joy of reunion was fleeting, immediately replaced by fear. She urgently pushed her son away. "You must leave at once. If that demon returns, he will kill you." She devised a plan, telling her son to return to the temple. She would feign illness and lie to Liu Hong that she had once made a vow to offer 100 pairs of shoes to a monastery, and now she had to go to Jinshan Temple to fulfill it. That would be their chance to discuss a plan for revenge. Xuanzang obeyed his mother. A few days later, Lady Yin executed the plan perfectly. Under the pretext of fulfilling a vow, she went to Jinshan Temple. There, in a secluded corner, she met her son again. She told Xuanzang to take off his shoe. Seeing the little toe on his left foot was missing a piece, the mark she had left all those years ago, she could no longer restrain herself. She gave him a golden bracelet and another letter instructing him, "Take this bracelet to Hongzhou and find a man named Liu Xiaoer at the Wanhua shop. That is where your grandmother, Lady Zhang, used to lodge. After you find her, take this letter to the capital, Chang'an. Find the residence of Chancellor Yin Kaishan, who was your maternal grandfather. Give him this letter, and he will know what to do to save me and avenge your father." Xuanzang accepted the solemn mission, bowed to bid farewell to his mother and his master, and began his second journey. He went to Hongzhou and found the Wanhua shop, but the owner told him that because Lady Zhang had grown old and blind and had no money to pay rent, she had moved into an old, abandoned pottery kiln, surviving by begging. Xuanzang found the kiln and saw a tattered old woman with blind eyes. He was overcome with grief. He knelt down and recounted the entire story. Lady Zhang heard the voice, so much like her son's, and took the golden bracelet from her daughter-in-law, and she believed it was true. Grandmother and grandson embraced and wept. Xuanzang looked up to the heavens and prayed for his grandmother's sight to be restored. His prayer was answered. He gently licked her eyes with his tongue, and a miracle occurred. Lady Zhang's eyes slowly regained their sight. After arranging a stable life for his grandmother, Xuanzang did not rest for a moment, continuing on towards Chang'an. Finally, after a long and arduous journey, he stood before the imposing residence of the chancellor. The guards went in to report, and Chancellor Yin Kaishan and his wife were quite surprised. They had no relatives in the monastic community, but the Chancellor's wife suddenly recalled a dream from the previous night where she saw her daughter Mantangjiao return, and a premonition stirred in her heart, so she had the young monk invited in. Xuanzang entered, and upon seeing his maternal grandparents, he could not hold back his tears. He knelt, kowtowed, and then presented his mother's letter. Chancellor Yin Kaishan opened the letter. As he read, his expression changed from surprise and confusion to a pale mask of anger and pain. After reading, he slammed the table and cried out loud. When his wife pressed him for an explanation, he choked out the entire horrifying truth. His treasured son-in-law had been murdered, and his daughter had been forced to live in shame with the enemy for 18 years. This young monk was his own long-lost grandson. The entire Chancellor's residence was plunged into grief, but the sorrow quickly turned into a flame of vengeance. The Chancellor comforted his wife. "Do not be too heartbroken. Tomorrow I will go to court to report to His Majesty and ask for troops to capture that traitor, rescue our daughter, and avenge our son-in-law." The next morning, before the Dragon Throne, Yin Kaishan reported the entire affair. Upon hearing it, Emperor Taizong of Tang was enraged. A case of murder, wife-stealing, and impersonating a court official for 18 years was an intolerable humiliation. The emperor immediately issued an edict, granting the Chancellor 60,000 elite troops and giving him full authority to eradicate this evil. The emperor's command was like a mountain. 60,000 troops set out immediately, marching day and night towards Zhangzhou. They set up a secret camp on the bank of the Hong River, then sent men to covertly invite the local officials, showing them the emperor's edict and exposing the true face of the fake prefect. A net of justice had been cast. At dawn the next day, while Liu Hong was still deep in his dreams of glory, the sound of war drums, gongs, and earth-shaking shouts surrounded him from all sides. The imperial army stormed the residence like a tempest. Liu Hong had no time to react and was captured and bound. His entire faction, including Li Biao, was also caught in the net. Yin Kaishan sent men to invite his daughter out to meet him. But Yin Wenjiao, after 18 years of living in disgrace, felt she had no face to see her father. She found a rope, intending to end her life. Fortunately, Xuanzang heard the news and rushed in to save his mother. He knelt and cried, "Mother, grandfather has come to avenge father. How can you bear to take your own life? If you die, what meaning is there for me to live in this world?" The Chancellor also entered and consoled his daughter. She sobbed and said, "A woman is meant to serve only one husband. I failed to preserve my chastity and had to serve the enemy. Even though my great revenge has been achieved, what face do I have to look at anyone? What face do I have to meet my husband in the underworld?" The Chancellor said sorrowfully, "My child, this is not your fault. You encountered an unavoidable disaster. You had to bend to the circumstances to preserve the bloodline of the Chen family. You are not to blame at all. 3 generations, grandfather, daughter, and grandson, embraced and wept bitterly. Justice had to be served. The Chancellor ordered a tribunal to be set up right at the river ferry from all those years ago. Liu Hong and Li Biao were interrogated, and they confessed to all their crimes. Li Biao was sentenced to death by 1,000 cuts. As for Liu Hong, he was taken to the exact spot on the river where he had committed his crime. There, the Chancellor had him disemboweled, and his heart and liver were taken as a sacrifice to the spirit of Chen Guangrui. A mournful eulogy was read, its words echoing across the river's surface. When the eulogy was burned, the smoke drifted down to the underwater palace. The Dragon King received it and immediately summoned Guangrui's soul, joyfully announcing, "Congratulations to you. Your wrongful death has been avenged. Your father-in-law, wife, and son are holding a sacrificial ceremony for you on the river." I now return your body to you, along with these treasures. Go and reunite with your family." With that, the Dragon King ordered a yaksha to deliver Guangrui's body to the surface of the water. On the riverbank, after the ceremony, Yin Wenjiao's grief was still inconsolable. She sprang up, intending to throw herself into the river to follow her husband. Xuanzang and the others rushed to hold her back. At that very moment, a miraculous scene occurred. A body slowly floated to the surface and drifted ashore, its clothes still perfectly intact. It was Chen Guangrui. Everyone was horrified and quickly pulled him out. Yin Wenjiao embraced her husband's body, wailing tragically. Amidst the mournful cries, Chen Guangrui slowly opened his eyes, then dazedly sat up. He saw his wife, his father-in-law, and a young monk weeping beside him and asked in confusion, "What is happening?" Yin Wenjiao tearfully recounted everything. Guangrui was stunned, then also told the story of how he was saved by the Dragon King. He pointed to the jade belt and jewels he wore as proof of his unbelievable tale. After the storm comes the calm. The decline has ended, and prosperity has returned. The whole family embraced in a flood of overwhelming happiness. The great army returned in triumphant celebration. Passing through Hangzhou, they stopped to pick up Lady Zhang. The entire family was finally and completely reunited in the capital. When Emperor Taizong heard the story, he marveled at the strangeness of fate and appointed Chen Guangrui to the position of scholar of the Hanlin Academy, a high office in the court. Xuanzang, having repaid the profound debt of gratitude to his parents, had fulfilled his filial duty. He used the money granted by the emperor to rebuild Jinshan Temple, repaying the kindness of his master, Faming, who had raised him. After that, he bid farewell to his family and returned to the path of spiritual cultivation. His worldly mission was complete, but a greater mission, a grand journey to the west, awaited him. In a fertile land near the bustling capital city of Chang'an, where the Jing River flowed languidly, its clear surface was like a mirror reflecting the clouds in the sky. Here, on the border between water and forest, two noble souls had chosen a reclusive life. By the river's edge was the home of Zhang Lao, a fisherman whose hair had turned the color of wind and frost, a man who found philosophy in every cast of his net. A little deeper at the edge of the woods was the hut of Li Ding, a woodcutter who could read the profound wisdom in every wood grain, every pattern of a tree. Both were men of great learning and talent, but they had long ago turned their backs on the path of official examinations to find joy in the simple pleasures of fishing and woodcutting. One late afternoon, as the sunset dyed the water's surface gold, the two old friends sat together in a small roadside tavern. Tipsy from the wine, they helped each other home, their steps wandering along the beaten path. Zhang Lao, with his gaze fixed distantly on the river, spoke, his voice deep and resonant like a temple bell. "Brother Li, I find it truly strange when I ponder it. Those who vie for fame die for fame. Those who seize profit risk their lives for profit. Bearing the king's favor is like holding a venomous snake in one's bosom. Enjoying the Lord's patronage is as nerve-wracking as a shrimp being dropped into a steamer. All things considered, all of them are far worse off than the two of us. Here, there are only green mountains and emerald waters. There is leisure and ease. Life just drifts by peacefully. Though there is no glory, there is also no shame." Li Ding smiled, stroking his silver beard, and replied, "Brother Zhang speaks the truth. But in my opinion, your emerald waters are still inferior to my green mountains here." An interesting debate arose. Zhang Lao argued that a wise man is like water, flexible and profound. Li Ding believed that a virtuous man is like a mountain, steadfast and tolerant. After some back and forth, they decided to use poetry to settle the matter, an elegant game called linked verse, where each person would recite a line of poetry continuing the other's idea. And so, amidst the tranquility of heaven and earth, their verses rose, weaving together. Zhang Lao's words carried the breath of the vast river. A boat charges the emerald current in the morning mist. 100 fish gaze at the brightly shining moon. Meanwhile, Li Ding's verses were imbued with the spirit of the majestic mountains and forests. My home in the green mountains leans on cypress and pine. I venture alone into the deep, dark forest. They spoke of their carefree ease, of looking down on fame and fortune, of the simple joy of befriending the moon and stars, the rivers and mountains. The beautiful words, like embroidered brocade, wove a perfect picture of the transcendental life they had chosen. The poetic exchange ended when they reached a fork in the road. Before parting, Zhang Lao let slip a jest. "Brother Li, be careful of fierce tigers in the forest. If something happens to you, who will I find at the market tomorrow to be my soulmate?" Unexpectedly, the casual joke ignited a new argument. Li Ding retorted angrily, "You have such a venomous tongue. Friends should live and die for each other. Why would you curse me like that? If a fierce tiger eats me, then a tidal wave will surely drown you too." Zhang Lao laughed loudly, full of confidence. "A tidal wave could never drown me." "How can you be so sure?" Li Ding asked, puzzled. "Your trade is adrift on the water, full of unforeseen dangers. How can you call that stable?" At this, Zhang Lao lowered his voice, a mysterious look in his eyes. He revealed a shocking secret. In the western part of Chang'an City, there was a fortune-teller named Yuan Shucheng, a master of divine calculation who understood the workings of heaven. Every day, Zhang Lao only needed to bring him a single golden carp, and the master would cast a divination for him. The hexagram would point to where the fish were, and he would simply go there and cast his net, and 100 times out of 100, it was never wrong. That was why his fishing trade was so secure. The two friends had no idea that every word they spoke, every secret they revealed, had been overheard by a third party. Hidden beneath the clear water of the Jing River, a patrolling Yaksha demon had heard everything. The name Yuan Shucheng and the phrase 100 casts without a single miss horrified it. It hastily dove deep to the bottom of the river, rushing towards the splendid crystal palace to report the terrible news. In the Dragon Palace, the Dragon King who ruled the Jing River was seated on his throne. The Yaksha rushed in, prostrated itself, and reported, "Your Majesty, a great disaster is upon us. There is a fortune-teller in Chang'an who, for just one fish a day, can pinpoint the locations for the fishermen, causing them to scoop up all the fish and shrimp in the river. If this continues, our aquatic troops will soon be annihilated. And then, who will serve your Majesty?" Upon hearing this, the Dragon King's rage flared up violently. A mere mortal dared to interfere with the workings of the aquatic race under his command? This was an intolerable insult. The Dragon King instantly drew his treasured sword, his dragon robe fluttering, intending to personally go to Chang'an to eliminate the arrogant fortune-teller. The terrified water spirits advised against it, urging him to first transform into a scholar to investigate the truth of the matter. Heeding their advice, the Dragon King suppressed his anger, transformed into a scholar in white with an extraordinary appearance, stepped onto the shore, and blended into the bustling crowds of the capital. A god in disguise, carrying the wrath of an entire river, was heading straight for Yuan Shucheng's divination stall. A fateful confrontation was about to take place. When a god who controls the wind and rain faces a mortal who can seemingly predict the secrets of heaven, what will happen? Can human wisdom match the power of a deity? The capital city of Chang'an was a sea of people, with the countless mixed sounds of life. But in a corner of the western market, there was a space that seemed separate from the clamor. This was where Yuan Shucheng had set up his divination stall. The Dragon King, who ruled the Jing River, was seated on his throne. The Yaksha rushed in, prostrated itself, and reported, "Your Majesty, a great disaster is upon us. There is a fortune-teller in Chang'an who, for just one fish a day, can pinpoint the locations for the fishermen, causing them to scoop up all the fish and shrimp in the river. If this continues, our aquatic troops will soon be annihilated. And then, who will serve your Majesty?" He was not a boastful man who spoke in flowery language. On the contrary, he sat serenely on a bamboo chair, with a dignified demeanor and eyes as deep as the cosmos, exuding an unusually majestic aura. The Dragon King, in the guise of a scholar in white, parted the crowd and approached. He carried the arrogance of a god, his eyes glinting with scrutiny and doubt. He was determined to expose this mortal. After a few pleasantries, the scholar did not ask about fate or fortune, but went straight to a matter that belonged to his own domain of power. "I wish to ask," he began, his voice tinged with challenge, "on which day will it rain?" Yuan Shucheng was not flustered in the slightest. He calmly cast a hexagram, the ancient coins clinking on the table. After a moment of contemplation, he slowly recited the oracle's words. "Clouds cover the mountaintops, mist shrouds the western peaks. If you ask when the rain will sprinkle, it will surely be tomorrow." The scholar sneered, showing his disbelief. "If you say tomorrow, then may I ask, at precisely what hour will the clouds gather? What hour will the thunder clap? What hour will the rain fall? And how many feet and inches will the river rise?" This was a trap, an unanswerable question. Any answer would be mere groundless speculation. But Yuan Shucheng, with absolute composure, delivered a prophecy so detailed it was absurd, a forecast accurate to the very last drop of water. "Tomorrow, at the hour of the dragon, the clouds will gather. At the hour of the snake, the thunder will sound. At the hour of the horse, the rain will pour, and it will stop completely at the end of the hour of the goat. The river water will rise exactly 3 feet, 3 inches, 4 fen, and 8 li." This astonishing precision made the scholar burst out laughing. He proposed a bet. "Excellent! These are not idle words. If everything tomorrow happens exactly as you have predicted, without the slightest deviation, I will reward you with 50 taels of silver. But if there is no rain, or if it does rain but is off by even a little in terms of time or water level, then don't blame me for smashing this stall of yours, tearing down your sign and chasing you out of Chang'an, so you can no longer deceive the people." Yuan Shucheng simply smiled and nodded. "I accept the wager." The Dragon King flicked his sleeves and left, his heart filled with contempt. He was the lord of the Jing River, the god who commanded the rain and wind. When and how much it rained, was that not entirely in his hands? What could a mortal possibly know of heaven's secrets? Returning to his underwater palace, he recounted the bet to his generals. They all burst out laughing, certain that victory already belonged to their master. But, right in the midst of their triumphant laughter, an unexpected event occurred. The atmosphere in the Crystal Palace suddenly became solemn. A voice echoed from the heavens. "Dragon King, come forth to receive a decree from the celestial court." The Dragon King was terrified. He hastily adjusted his robes, set up an incense table, and knelt to receive it. From the clouds above, a divine warrior in golden armor holding a radiant decree flew straight down into the Dragon Palace. The Dragon King tremblingly accepted the edict. As soon as the celestial messenger departed, he hurriedly opened it. Each character on the decree was like a needle piercing the Dragon King's eyes. The celestial court commanded, "The dragons of the 8 rivers shall obey the order, adhering to the appointed time. Tomorrow, without delay, bring rain to the land of Chang'an." And then the following lines made the Dragon King freeze, his soul scattered in shock. The order from heaven specified, "At the hour of the dragon, gather clouds. At the hour of the snake, sound thunder. At the hour of the horse, rain. At the end of the hour of the goat, cease. Water shall rise 3 feet, 3 inches, 4 fen, and 8 li." The timing and the amount of rain matched Yuan Shucheng's words perfectly. That fortune-teller was not guessing. He was reading the sacred decrees of the celestial court in advance. The Dragon King's limbs went weak as he realized he had lost in the most humiliating way. Just as he was about to accept defeat, His carp counselor offered a plan. "Do not worry, my lord," it said. "It is not difficult to defeat him. You only need to alter things slightly. As long as the rain falls at the wrong time and you reduce the amount of water a little, his prediction will not come true. Thus, he will still lose the bet." The Dragon King, in his anger and desire to win, followed this malicious advice. He did not realize that winning a bet with a mortal was far less important than obeying the command of heaven. The next day, the Dragon King summoned the Thunder God, the Wind God, Mother Lightning, and Brother Cloud. He intentionally delayed everything. He waited until the hour of the snake to gather the clouds, the hour of the horse to sound the thunder, the hour of the goat to start the rain, and by the hour of the monkey, he had made it stop. He also deliberately reduced the amount of water. Having finished his work, the Dragon King, feeling triumphant, once again transformed into the scholar in white and approached Yuan Shaocheng's stall with the haughty look of a victor. Without a word, he strode forward, slammed the table, threw down the ink brush, and then yanked down the sign hanging in front of the stall, intending to tear it to shreds. However, Yuan Shucheng remained seated, his face showing not a hint of fear or surprise. He merely looked at the vandal before him with an expression that was both pitying and cold. The scholar roared, "You fraud! You got the time wrong, the water level wrong, and you can still sit there with a straight face? Get out of here before I beat you to death." At this, Yuan Shaocheng finally let out a laugh, a clear, ringing laugh that sent a chill down his opponent's spine. "I am not afraid," he said. "I have committed no capital crime. I only fear that someone else is about to die. You can fool others, but you can't fool me. You are not a scholar in white. You are the Dragon King of the Jing River. You dared to defy a heavenly decree, willfully changing the time and amount of rainfall. You have committed a grave crime against the celestial court, punishable by extermination. Death is already hanging over your head, and you still have the nerve to stand here and curse me?" Every word from Yuan Shucheng was like a thunderbolt striking the Dragon King's mind. His disguise was stripped away. His heinous crime was exposed. The once mighty god's face was now drained of all color. The signpost in his hand fell to the ground. He trembled in panic, then collapsed, kowtowing before the mortal fortune-teller. Before the mortal fortune-teller, the majestic Dragon King was now just a trembling criminal begging for mercy. "Master, save my life!" he pleaded, his voice devoid of all authority. Yuan Shucheng shook his head slightly, a flicker of sympathy in his eyes, but also a sense of helplessness. "I am merely a messenger of fate. How can I save you? But I can show you a path, a faint glimmer of hope to plead for your life." The Dragon King looked up, clinging to this last hope. Yuan Shaocheng revealed an even more terrifying secret. At the hour of the horse tomorrow, the one entrusted by the celestial court to execute you is none other than Wei Zheng, the current chancellor of the great Tang Emperor. A mortal would execute a god. The Dragon King was stunned, but then he began to understand. Yuan Shucheng continued, "Wei Zheng is a loyal minister to Emperor Taizong. If you can successfully plead with the Emperor and have him issue an order to keep Wei Zheng occupied, you might just escape this calamity." This was the only way out. The Dragon King dared not delay. He hurriedly thanked Yuan Shucheng and vanished into thin air. He did not return to his underwater palace, but hovered among the clouds, waiting for night to fall upon the capital. That night, in a deep sleep, Emperor Taizong, the wise sovereign of the Tang dynasty, had a strange dream. He saw himself strolling in the palace gardens when a man appeared, drenched and with a sorrowful face, kneeling before him. The man identified himself as the Dragon King of the Jing River, recounted the entire story of his unjust situation, and tearfully begged His Majesty to save his life from the blade of Chancellor Wei Zheng at the hour of the horse the next day. Taizong was a benevolent ruler. Seeing the man plead so earnestly, and him being a deity, he could not bring himself to refuse. He solemnly promised, "You may return with peace of mind. If the execution is indeed Wei Zheng's duty, I can certainly save you." Having received the golden promise of the Son of Heaven, the Dragon King was overjoyed, kowtowed in thanks, and disappeared. Emperor Taizong awoke with a start, his forehead beaded with sweat, but the promise from his dream still echoed clearly in his mind. The next morning, he held court, his heart heavy with concern. He scanned the ranks of civil and military officials, from Feng Xuanling and Du Ruhui to Qin Shubao and Yu Qigong. All were present, except for one person, Chancellor Wei Zheng. The emperor's heart burned with anxiety. He immediately summoned his strategist, Shu Maogong, told him about the dream, and asked for a plan. Shu Maogong advised, "Since your majesty has made a promise, you must keep your word. Please immediately send for Wei Zheng to come to court. Then, your majesty need only keep him by your side and not let him go anywhere. Once the hour of the horse has passed today, the Dragon King will surely be saved." Taizong followed his advice and immediately sent a court attendant to summon Wei Zheng. Unexpectedly, Wei Zheng had also received a secret order the night before. While observing the celestial phenomena, he had received a decree from the heavens, entrusting him with the great responsibility of beheading the guilty Dragon King at precisely the hour of the horse. Preoccupied with sharpening his magic sword and preparing for this sacred task, he had not attended the morning court session. Now, summoned by the emperor, he dared not disobey and hurriedly put on his court attire and went to the palace. After the court session ended, all the officials retired, but Wei Zheng alone was kept behind by the emperor. Emperor Taizong invited his chancellor into the inner palace, saying they needed to discuss important matters of state. Time passed slowly. As the hour of the horse, the decisive moment for the Dragon King's life, approached, the emperor ordered a palace maid to set up a go-board. "Chancellor," the king said with a smile, "let us play a game of Go for some relaxation." Wei Zheng dared not refuse. A battle of wits began. Outside, the sun slowly climbed to its zenith. Inside, Emperor Taizong deliberately made his moves very slowly, trying every means to prolong the game. He was playing Go, but in reality, he was fighting against fate, using his mortal power to interfere with a verdict from the celestial court. The game dragged on. Wei Zheng, having been up all night preparing for his mission, began to feel tired. His eyelids grew heavy, and then just moments before the hour of the horse passed, he suddenly slumped over the go-board, fast asleep, and began to snore. Seeing this, Emperor Taizong breathed a silent sigh of relief. He had succeeded. Wei Zheng was sound asleep right before his eyes, his hands limp at his sides, with no sword, no magic. The hour of the horse had passed. The Dragon King was surely safe. The king smiled and signaled for the palace maids to remain quiet, letting his loyal chancellor rest in peace. A moment later, Wei Zheng awoke with a start. He frantically knelt to apologize for his discourtesy before the king. Taizong graciously waved his hand. "You have committed no offense. Rise, let us continue the game." But at that very moment, a terrified scream came from outside. General Qin Shubao, clad in iron armor, ran in breathlessly, carrying a horrifying object. He knelt in the dragon courtyard, held the object up, and announced loudly, "Your Majesty!" A most bizarre event. A giant dragon's head with blood still pouring from it just fell from the sky at the crossroads. Emperor Taizong was terrified. His face changed color. He turned to Wei Zheng, who was still dazed from his sleep. "Chancellor, what is the meaning of this?" Wei Zheng immediately knelt and calmly reported something that stunned the emperor and everyone present, sending a chill down their spines. "Your Majesty, when your servant dozed off just now, it was then that my primordial spirit went out to behead that dragon. The promise was broken. The life was not saved. For the first time in his life, the Son of Heaven had failed to keep a promise, and to a vengeful spirit no less. Now, as night fell, what would the powerful emperor have to face? How terrifying would the wrath of a wrongfully executed Dragon King be? Emperor Taizong might have been the monarch who ruled the entire world, but he could not command the torment in his own heart. The broken promise became a ghost, haunting him more terrifyingly than any enemy on the battlefield. The magnificent palace, once a symbol of power, now became a prison of fear whenever night fell. As the second watch of the night struck, mournful wails could be heard from outside the palace gates. The emperor's eyes flew open in terror, and he saw it. The vengeful spirit of the Dragon King, holding its own bloody head, hovered in midair, its hateful eyes staring straight at him. Its voice rang out, not through the air, but directly into the king's mind. "You promised to save me. Why did you order your chancellor to execute me? You have broken your promise. Now come with me to the underworld for King Yama to judge." The ghost lunged forward, grabbing Taizong's dragon robe. He felt a bone-chilling cold, and his entire body was drenched in sweat. Night after night, the same horrifying nightmare repeated itself, draining the life force and will of the emperor. His illness worsened daily, and the most skilled imperial physicians were helpless, only able to whisper that His Majesty's pulse was in chaos, and they feared the mandate of heaven was running out. This news terrified the entire court. Seeing the emperor tormented day and night by evil spirits, the two mightiest generals of the great Tang, Qin Shubao and Yu Qigong, could not stand by. They requested permission to dress in their armor, one holding a battle axe, the other a steel mace, and personally stand guard at the palace gates for the emperor. That night was, indeed, a peaceful one. The heaven-piercing, killing intent of the two fierce generals kept the ghosts and demons at bay. For the first time in many days, Emperor Taizong had a full night's sleep. He was incredibly grateful, but couldn't bear to have his two great marshals suffer hardship every night. He thus summoned the most talented painter to create portraits of Qin Shubao and Yu Qigong in all their majestic glory, and had them pasted onto the two wings of the palace gate. And that is the origin of the custom of pasting images of the two door gods, which we still see to this day. However, the Dragon King's spirit was extremely persistent. Unable to enter through the front gate, it went around to the back, continuing to throw bricks and tiles and wail mournfully. The king once again lost his sleep. At this point, Chancellor Weizheng offered to guard the back gate. That night, Weizheng held the very treasured sword he had used to slay the dragon, and the righteous aura emanating from him shone like a halo, forcing all evil spirits to retreat in fear. The palace was finally completely quiet, but it was too late. The fear and torment had drained the emperor's life force. His illness became critical. Knowing he would not survive, Taizong summoned his key ministers, entrusted them with the affairs of the state, then had himself bathed and changed into a new dragon robe, lying on the dragon bed, calmly awaiting his final moments. The entire palace was filled with the sound of weeping. But just as the emperor was about to draw his last breath, Weizheng leaned close to his ear, grasped the king's sleeve, and whispered, "Please rest assured, Your Majesty, I still have one last plan that can protect your dragon body." Taizong struggled to open his eyes. Weizheng continued, his voice urgent. "I have a close, sworn friend named Quijue. In life, he was an official at court. Now, after death, he has become a high-ranking adjudicator in the underworld, in charge of the books of life and death. The bond between us is as deep as that of brothers. I have written a letter, which I present to Your Majesty. When you reach the netherworld, please find a way to deliver this letter personally to Adjudicator Quijue. Out of respect for our friendship, he will surely find a way to help Your Majesty return to the world of the living." A final glimmer of hope appeared. Emperor Taizong nodded, took the letter from Wei Zheng's hand, and carefully tucked it into his sleeve. Then he slowly closed his eyes and passed away. Cries of mourning echoed throughout the palace. The officials handled the enshrouding, placed the emperor's body in the golden coffin, and the entire court went into mourning. But the story was not yet over. For Emperor Taizong, death was not the end but the beginning of a journey unprecedented in history. His soul, that of the noble Son of Heaven, now just like any other soul, was walking alone on the cold Yellow Springs Road, heading towards the Hall of Yama. Tucked in his sleeve, he still tightly clutched a letter from the mortal world, a message of friendship, and also the only hope of changing the verdict of fate. On a quiet, moonlit night, when the imperial city of Chang'an was deep in slumber, Emperor Taizong suddenly felt his soul become restless and agitated. An invisible force urged him to leave the Five Phoenix Pavilion and walk through the silent grounds of the imperial palace. But then, a strange, dreamlike state came over him. The magnificent scenery of the palace suddenly vanished. In its place was a formidable contingent of troops and horses, their banners filling the sky, inviting the emperor to join them on a hunt. Taizong, in his daze, did not hesitate to follow. They crossed fields and passed over hills, the sound of hooves and cheers echoing. But then, in the blink of an eye, when the emperor looked back, the contingent had vanished. He was left alone, isolated in a desolate field, the grass and trees withered, the cold night dew seeping into his dragon robe. All around was a deathly silence, not a path, not a soul in sight. A primal fear, the fear of being lost and adrift, began to invade the mind of the Son of Heaven. In his moment of desperation, a deep and clear voice suddenly rang out from the distance, shattering the silence. "Your Majesty, please come this way." Emperor Taizong was startled and quickly turned to look. In the dim moonlight, he saw a person kneeling by the roadside. The person was dressed in the attire of an official, wearing a horizontal tablet hat, a leather belt at his waist, and respectfully holding an ivory tablet. His appearance was majestic, his demeanor dignified. The official spoke, his voice full of reverence. "Your servant is late in escorting you. I beg your Majesty's forgiveness." Taizong, though still stunned, regained the solemnity of a king. He asked, "Who are you? How do you know I am here?" The person bowed his head and reported, "My surname is Kui. My given name is Jue. In life, I served the former emperor, acting as the magistrate of Chiju, and was later promoted to vice minister of the Ministry of Rites. Now, having passed into the underworld, I have been assigned the position of adjudicator, specializing in judging the ledgers of life and death. A few days ago, I saw the vengeful soul of the Dragon King come to the Palace of Darkness to file a lawsuit, so I knew in advance that your Majesty would be making a journey to this place today. Therefore, I came here specifically to welcome you." Hearing this, Emperor Taizong finally understood. He helped Adjudicator Kui to his feet, his heart filled with gratitude. Suddenly, the Emperor remembered a crucial matter, a trust from the mortal world. He said, "It is truly fortunate to meet you here. Chancellor Wei Zheng from the Imperial Court has sent you a letter." With that, the Emperor took a carefully sealed letter from his sleeve and handed it to Kui Jue. Adjudicator Kui received it with both hands, his face unable to hide his surprise. He opened the letter and read it. The words of his old friend, his former colleague, seemed to appear before his eyes. The letter was one of greeting, of nostalgia for their old friendship, and most importantly, an earnest plea. Wei Zheng recounted their past bonds and implored Adjudicator Kui, with his important position in the underworld, to find a way to help the Emperor on this unexpected journey, so that he could successfully return to the mortal world. After reading the letter, Adjudicator Kui was deeply moved. He looked up at the emperor with a resolute gaze. "Your Majesty, please do not worry. I am fully aware of the matter of Chancellor Wei Jung beheading the Dragon King in a dream. Furthermore, he has shown great kindness in caring for my descendants in the mortal world. Now that I have his letter of request, no matter what, I will do everything in my power to protect your Majesty and ensure that you can be reborn and return to rule the empire." Before Emperor Taizong could offer his thanks, two page boys in turquoise robes, one holding a banner and the other a canopy, emerged silently from the mist. They bowed their heads and said in unison, "King Yama summons the emperor." The path ahead was shrouded in dense darkness. Emperor Taizong, with Adjudicator Kuai by his side, followed the two page boys. Before long, a colossal city appeared. Above the city gate hung a large sign carved with 7 dazzling golden characters that nonetheless emanated a cold light. Ghost Gate Pass of the Netherworld. The gate to the world of the dead. When the page boy gently shook the banner, the heavy stone gate slowly creaked open with a terrifying sound. A gust of bone-chilling air rushed out. Just as they stepped through the gate, 2 blurry ghosts lunged forward, wailing with grief and hatred. "Li Shimin! You have come! Give us back our lives!" Emperor Taizong recognized them with horror. They were the vengeful souls of his 2 brothers, Crown Prince Jiancheng and the Prince of Qi Yuanji, who had fallen at his hand during the Xuanwu Gate incident years ago. Their spirits, one grabbing his hand, the other pulling his robe, shrieked, demanding his life. Here at the Ghost Gate Pass, the Son of Heaven felt, for the first time, an utter helplessness when confronted with the blood debts of his past. Faced with the wrath of his deceased relatives, Emperor Taizong, the monarch who shook the world, was now just a trembling soul. But just as the vengeful claws were about to touch him, Adjudicator Kuei let out a powerful shout. Instantly, from the shadows, ghost bailiffs with green faces and silver fangs, holding chains, appeared. They spoke not a word, but with eyes as sharp as knives and a ferocious aura, they forced the 2 vengeful souls of Jiancheng and Yuanji to retreat. The past, however painful, was less terrifying than the laws of the underworld. With the immediate danger past, Emperor Taizong was able to compose himself. He followed Adjudicator Kui deeper into the earth. The path was no longer desolate, but paved with cold green stone. On both sides stood rows of temples and pavilions, with curved eave roofs and exquisite architecture, yet they exuded a somber, eerie solemnity. There were no lamps, but everything was clearly visible in a dim, mysterious light of unknown origin. After a few miles, a magnificent hall loomed before them, with 3 large characters above it reading Senluo Hall. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the tinkling of jade chimes, and a solemn, elegant fragrance of incense filled the air. From within the hall, a procession emerged. Leading the way were 2 pairs of ghost bailiffs carrying lanterns that cast a soft green light. Following them were 10 kings, wearing crowns and robed in majestic attire. They were the 10 kings of hell, the supreme rulers of the realm of the dead. Seeing the arrival of the mortal emperor, the 10 kings simultaneously bowed in a gesture of respect. Emperor Taizong, being extremely humble, did not dare to walk ahead and hurriedly returned the courtesy. One of the kings, King Qingguang, ruler of the first hall, smiled and said, "Your Majesty is the king of the Yang world, ruling over the living. We are the kings of the Yin world, judging the deceased. Although the realms of Yin and Yang are separate, etiquette cannot be dispensed with. Your Majesty is an honored guest. Please do not stand on ceremony." Only then did Emperor Taizong dare to walk alongside the 10 kings into Senluo Hall. After they were seated according to their roles as host and guest, the fateful cross-examination officially began. King Qingguang spoke in a deep, powerful voice that echoed throughout the great hall. "Your Majesty, the ghost of the Jing River Dragon King has repeatedly come here to cry injustice, claiming that Your Majesty promised to save his life, but then broke that promise, causing him to be beheaded. May I ask, what is the truth of this matter?" Emperor Taizong stood up and, with great dignity, recounted the entire story. He told of the strange dream, the Dragon King's desperate plea for help, and his own promise. "I did indeed promise to save the Dragon King," the Emperor said. "For that very reason, I invited Chancellor Weizheng to the palace to play Go, with the intention of keeping him occupied past the hour of execution. Who would have known that the Chancellor is such an incorruptible and upright official that he could dispatch his spirit to slay a dragon in his sleep?" This was due to Wei Zheng's abilities, and also because the Dragon King had committed a heinous crime and his time was up. I absolutely had no intention of going back on my word. Why am I being falsely accused? After hearing this, the 10 Yama Kings looked at each other and nodded in unison. King Qingguang gently explained, "We already knew that Dragon's fate was to die at the hands of Wei Zheng. This was preordained in the ledger of life and death. However, because he was unwilling to accept it and repeatedly filed complaints, the law required us to invite Your Majesty here for a 3-party confrontation, so that everything could be made fair and clear. In fact, we had already sent him to be reincarnated some time ago. This journey has troubled Your Majesty. Please accept our apologies." With that, the Yama King gave an order. "Adjudicator Kui, bring forth the ledger of life and death and check how many years remain in the lifespan of the great Tang Emperor." Adjudicator Kui obeyed and entered the records repository. Amidst the tens of thousands of ledgers recording the fates of all living beings, he quickly found the volume for the kings of the southern Jambudvipa continent. Anxiously, he secretly opened it to look first. A line of text appeared that made his heart stop. "Emperor Taizong of the great Tang nation, reign of 13 years, lifespan ends." Adjudicator Kui was horrified. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. In that decisive moment, thinking of his friendship with Wei Zheng and the safety of the monarch, he did something audacious. He quickly took a brush, dipped it in ink, and tremblingly added 2 strokes to the character 1, Yi, in the phrase 13 years, Yi Shisan Nian. The character 1 instantly transformed into the character 3, San. The fated number of 13 years, in a flash, became 33 years. After he was done, he carried the ledger out and presented it. When the 10 Yama Kings looked it over and saw it clearly written 33 years, they were greatly surprised. King Qingguang asked Taizong, "May I ask how many years Your Majesty has been on the throne?" Emperor Taizong replied, "I have only been on the throne for 13 years. Hearing this, the 10 kings breathed a collective sigh of relief and said cheerfully, "Then Your Majesty may rest assured. You still have 20 years left in your lifespan. Now that the confrontation is over, we will have someone escort Your Majesty's soul back to your body." Emperor Taizong was overjoyed and bowed in gratitude. Before leaving, he clasped his hands and asked, "May I ask the kings of darkness, is everyone in my palace safe and sound?" The Yama King replied, "All are safe, but we fear that Your Majesty's royal sister, Princess Li Yuying, does not have much time left." Those words were like a bucket of cold water, extinguishing the joy that had just sparked in the emperor's heart. To show his gratitude, Taizong promised that upon returning to the mortal world, he would send a gift of watermelons, a product that the underworld lacked. The promise was noted. The 10 kings of hell then ordered Grand Marshal Zhou and Adjudicator Kui to escort the emperor on his journey back. After bidding farewell to the 10 kings of hell, Emperor Taizong, along with Adjudicator Kui and Grand Marshal Zhou, walked out of Senluo Hall to begin the journey back to the mortal world. However, the path before him was completely unfamiliar, not the one he had taken upon his arrival. The fog was thicker, the air even colder. The Emperor could not help but be surprised and asked, "Adjudicator, it seems we have taken the wrong path." Adjudicator Kui smiled, a smile that held a deep meaning, and explained, "Your Majesty, we are not mistaken. The road to the underworld is a one-way street. Once taken, one cannot return the old way. King Yama specifically ordered me to guide Your Majesty along this route. Firstly, so that Your Majesty can witness firsthand how the underworld operates. And secondly, this path is also somewhat easier to travel." Hearing this, Emperor Taizong could only follow. Before long, a gigantic, dark mountain appeared, piercing the gloomy sky. Black clouds coiled around its peak like giant serpents, shrouding everything in a thick curtain of night. A suffocating aura, thick with the stench of death, emanated from the mountain. The Emperor was terrified, his voice trembling. "What is that mountain that looks so frightening?" "Your Majesty, that is the mountain of the wrongfully dead," Adjudicator Kui replied. "The place where souls must pass before reaching the halls of judgment." Emperor Taizong had never felt such fear. He stammered, "Such a treacherous mountain, how can I possibly cross it?" Adjudicator Kui reassured him, "Your Majesty, please rest easy. With us escorting you, nothing will happen." Even so, as he set foot on the perilous path winding around the mountain, the Emperor could not stop his legs from shaking. After crossing the mountain of the wrongfully dead, they passed by more than a dozen long, deep buildings of identical architecture. From each building came screams, wails, and heart-wrenching groans, tearing at one's soul, the sounds of ultimate pain, of eternal despair. The Emperor could not contain his curiosity and asked, "What kind of offices are these that have so much weeping and wailing?" Adjudicator Kui stopped, his expression becoming solemn. He pointed to each row of buildings, his voice dropping low, carrying the weight of 1,000 years of judgment. "Your Majesty, these are the 18 levels of hell. That is the prison of tendon pulling, the prison of the fiery pit, for those who in life had the hearts of wolves, committing evil without remorse. That is the prison of being sawn in half, the prison of tongue ripping, for the unfilial, the disloyal, those with deceitful tongues and malicious hearts. Farther on is the prison of the grinding mill, the prison of the crushing carts, where those who twist right and wrong, harm the innocent, and destroy justice are punished." He continued, his voice as steady as if reading an unchangeable verdict. "The prison of ice, the prison of dissection, for deceitful merchants who cheat on weights and measures. The prison of the oil cauldron, the prison of the mountain of knives, for cruel tyrants who bully the weak. And that one, the prison of the blood pool, where murderers, robbers, and those who harm animals for sacrifice must sink into eternal suffering, crying to a heaven that will not hear, calling to an earth that will not answer." Hearing Adjudicator Kui's clear descriptions, combined with the ceaseless, agonizing cries, Emperor Taizong felt a chill run down his spine. It was a fear not for himself, but for the brevity of human life that could accumulate so many sins, only to suffer eternal torment. Leaving the area of the 18 levels of hell, they walked for a long time before reaching the bank of a great river. 3 bridges spanned it, each with a different appearance. One bridge was of brilliant gold, another of sparkling silver, and in the middle was a single log bridge looking extremely rickety and precarious. Adjudicator Kui pointed to the gold and silver bridges, saying, "Those who were kind, loyal, just, and upright in life, upon death, will be led by ghost bailiffs with banners across these 2 bridges to a good reincarnation." The Emperor's gaze was then drawn to the middle bridge. It was only a few handspans wide, stretching endlessly to the other side, hundreds of feet high with no handrail. Below, the river was not water, but a roiling sea of blood, emitting a thick, putrid stench. Mixed in the bloody waves were countless iron serpents and bronze dogs, fighting to tear apart the sinful souls who were struggling and screaming. A cold wind blew fiercely from the river's surface, carrying with it miserable groans that made one shudder. That bridge. What is its name? Emperor Taizong asked, his voice hoarse. Your Majesty, that is the Bridge of Helplessness, Adjudicator Kui replied. The bridge of powerlessness and despair. When your Majesty returns to the mortal world, please describe this bridge in detail to admonish the living. Emperor Taizong held his breath and, with his escort, safely crossed the Golden Bridge. Once on the other side, they walked a bit further, and another city came into view. This city radiated an atmosphere of grief, which condensed into mist and smoke. Suddenly, from all over the city, thousands upon thousands of voices rose in unison, calling his name directly. Li Shimin has come! Li Shimin has come! This was accompanied by heart-rending cries. What an injustice! What an injustice! Before the emperor could collect himself, a flood of headless, handless ghosts with incomplete bodies poured out from the city gate. They rushed straight towards him, surrounding him, grabbing his robes, pulling his hands, and screaming for his life. These were the vengeful souls of the 64 heroic chieftains and 72 bandit gangs who had died during the wars to pacify the rebellions of the past. They had died before their time was up, unable to find peace, and had to remain in this city of the wrongfully dead, becoming hungry, lonely ghosts. Faced with this army of vengeful spirits as numerous as ants, Emperor Taizong was utterly terrified, able to do nothing but hide behind Adjudicator Kui, repeatedly calling for help. Trapped amidst the endless vengeful spirits, Emperor Taizong was so panicked that he forgot to refer to himself as we, only able to clutch Adjudicator Kui's robe and cry for help. The Adjudicator frowned and replied, Your Majesty, these are masterless ghosts who did not die by fate. I have no authority over them. To get past them, I fear there is only one way. What way? Please tell me quickly, Master. These vengeful souls are perpetually hungry because they cannot find peace. Your Majesty must offer them some gold and silver. If I speak on your behalf, perhaps they will agree to withdraw. Hearing this, Emperor Taizong's heart sank further into despair. I came here with only a soul. I have nothing on my person. Where am I to get money now? Adjudicator Kui seemed to have anticipated this and said, In the mortal world, there is a man named Xiang Liang from Kaifeng Prefecture, Henan. He is a man of great charity who often burns spirit money to send to the underworld. He currently has 13 vaults of silver deposited here. Your Majesty can write a promissory note, with me as the guarantor, to borrow one vault temporarily to distribute among the lonely souls. When you return to the mortal world later, you can repay Xiang Liang. Hearing there was a way out, the emperor was as overjoyed as a drowning man grasping a log. He immediately wrote the IOU, affixing the Son of Heaven's seal with his thumbprint. Adjudicator Kui took the note, then raised his voice, clear and resonant, echoing throughout the city of the wrongfully dead. Hear me, all vengeful souls. The Emperor of the Great Tang has a compassionate heart and bestows upon you a vault of gold and silver. Take it quickly for your use, then clear the way for his return. The Emperor's lifespan is still long. He returns to the mortal world by order of King Yama. In the future, he will hold a grand ceremony to deliver all of you from suffering. Do not obstruct him any longer. The Yaksha demons heard the order and hurriedly brought out the silver to distribute. The vengeful souls received the alms. Their resentful energy gradually dissipated, and one by one they bowed their heads and silently retreated into the darkness of the city. The path ahead was clear once more. Escaping the city of the wrongfully dead, they arrived at a large 6-way intersection where countless souls were gathered. Here, light and darkness mingled. Some areas shone with brilliant halos, others were shrouded in gloomy darkness. The souls, from immortals, kings, and monks to commoners, beasts, and demons, all automatically split into 6 streams, flowing in 6 different directions. Emperor Taizong asked in amazement, "What is this place?" Adjudicator Kuai replied, "This is the 6 paths of reincarnation. Your Majesty, please remember it well to admonish the mortal world. Those who achieve enlightenment in their spiritual practice will go to the path of immortals. The loyal and patriotic will go to the path of nobility. The filial and virtuous will go to the path of blessings and the path of wealth. Those who maintain their just nature will go to the path of humans. As for the cruel and vicious, they will be condemned to the path of animals or the path of ghosts. Your Majesty is an emperor and will return via the path of nobility." With that, Adjudicator Kui led the emperor to the entrance of the path of nobility. He bowed low in farewell. "I can only escort your Majesty this far. Grand Marshal Zhou will see you the rest of the way. Please remember my words. When you return to the mortal world, you must hold a great salvation ceremony for the vengeful souls. When the underworld is at peace, the mortal world will prosper. Only then can the empire enjoy eternal peace." Emperor Taizong, full of gratitude, bid farewell to the adjudicator who had helped him so devotedly. He followed Grand Marshal Zhou through the gate. A divine horse, fully saddled and bridled, was waiting. As soon as the emperor mounted, it neighed loudly and shot off like an arrow. The misty road receded behind them. When they reached a riverbank, the horse stopped. In the clear water below, a pair of shimmering golden carp were swimming playfully. Emperor Taizong was mesmerized by the rare, peaceful sight. Suddenly, Grand Marshal Zhou shouted, "Your Majesty, it is time. You must go now." With that, he used all his strength and shoved the emperor off the horse, sending him tumbling straight into the river. At that same moment, in the White Tiger Hall of the Imperial Palace, the court was plunged into mourning. The Empress, the Crown Prince, and all the civil and military officials surrounded the emperor's coffin, weeping. 3 days had passed, and some ministers began to discuss enthroning the Crown Prince. Only Wei Zheng firmly objected. "Please wait, everyone. Just wait until the end of today. His Majesty will surely come back to life." Xu Jingzong dismissed him. "The Chancellor speaks nonsense. How can spilled water be gathered up again? How can a dead man be revived?" In the midst of their argument, a loud shout suddenly came from within the sealed coffin. "I'm drowning! Save me!" Everyone was horrified. The Empress and the concubines retreated in fear. Only the bravest generals like Qin Shubao and Yu Qigong, along with Wei Zheng and Shu Maogong, dared to approach the coffin. They quickly used axes to pry open the lid. As soon as it was open, everyone was stunned. Emperor Taizong was sitting inside, his eyes still tightly shut, but his mouth endlessly shouting. The officials rushed to help him up. Emperor Taizong slowly opened his eyes, looked at his ministers, his expression still bewildered. I have just escaped from the underworld, only to be pushed into a river to drown by Grand Marshal Zhou. Did you all save me?" Everyone now understood and quickly had the imperial physician offer a calming medicine. After he was fully lucid, Emperor Taizong recounted his entire terrifying and wondrous journey to his officials. The very next morning, the emperor held court. He issued an edict of general amnesty, pardoning prisoners and releasing grain from the storehouses to aid the poor. He also had notices posted everywhere, advising the people to do good and avoid evil, to believe in the law of karma and retribution. The promise made to the underworld was also fulfilled. He sent a man to Kaifeng to return a vault of gold to Xiang Liang and began a search for someone who would volunteer to descend to the underworld to present watermelons to the 10 kings of hell. The journey to the netherworld not only saved Emperor Taizong from his calamity, but also completely changed his perspective on life, death, and the responsibilities of a monarch. From then on, his dynasty entered an era of prosperity and peace, praised by later generations as the reign of Zhengguan, one of the most glorious periods in history. In the bustling city of Guangzhou, where merchant ships bustled back and forth, there lived a wealthy merchant named Liu Quan. His life seemed perfect beside his gentle wife, Li Quilian, a woman who was not only beautiful but also possessed a noble and kind heart. She cared not for gold or jewels. Her only desire was to do good deeds, ever ready to help those in need. One day, when a Zen master passed by their residence, Li Quilian did not hesitate to remove the precious golden hairpin from her hair, a commemorative piece of jewelry, to offer to the monastery. This act, born of a devout heart, unexpectedly ignited a fateful tragedy. When Liu Quan found out, he flew into a rage. He could not understand his wife's heart. In his eyes, it was the act of a woman who did not know her place, carelessly giving away precious jewelry to an outsider. Words were exchanged, and Liu Quan's harsh rebukes were like invisible daggers plunging deep into Li Quilian's proud and pure heart. The sense of injustice and humiliation rose like an unstoppable tide. In a moment of despair, Li Quilian chose the most tragic escape. She took her own life, leaving behind 2 young children, a boy and a girl, who cried day and night for their mother. Their mournful cries tore at their father's heart. But now, Liu Quan's regret was mixed with a boundless anger. He was angry at his wife, angry at himself, and angry at the whole world. Meanwhile, in the capital city of Chang'an, Emperor Taizong of Tang had just survived a near-death experience, a horrifying journey to the underworld from which he was fortunate to return. He had promised the Yama kings that he would send them gifts from the mortal world as a token of gratitude. The emperor had notices posted everywhere, seeking a brave volunteer to descend to the realm of the dead to fulfill his promise. For Liu Quan, who was drowning in sorrow and wished to escape reality, the court's notice seemed like a way out. Leaving behind his fortune, leaving behind his 2 young children who needed him more than ever, he decided to accept the challenge, volunteering to bring watermelons, a precious product of the mortal world, to the underworld. Perhaps in his heart, he hoped this journey might help him find his deceased wife, to say a word of apology. Before the dragon throne, Emperor Taizong looked at the courageous man with a complex expression. He bestowed upon Liu Quan 2 plump watermelons, some spirit money, and a cup of poison. At the Golden Pavilion Inn, on the outskirts of the city, Liu Quan balanced the pair of melons on his head and calmly drank the cup of poison dry. His physical body fell, but his soul did not. A dim, ethereal light separated from his body, still retaining the form of the man balancing melons on his head, and began the journey into the world of darkness and judgment. The Ghost Gate Pass slowly opened. Liu Quan's soul, still clutching the spirit money, the melons still on his head, stepped into the land of the dead. The ghost bailiffs, finding this strange, stopped him. In a resolute voice, Liu Quan declared, "I come under the order of the great Tang Emperor to present precious melons to the Lord of Hell." Following the ghost bailiff, Liu Quan's soul passed over the misty Naihei bridges, witnessing countless spirits awaiting judgment. Finally, he was led before the Senluo Hall, where the 10 kings of hell sat on 10 towering thrones, as majestic as Mount Tai. Their gazes penetrated all falsehoods, and the air in the hall was heavy with the authority of absolute justice. Liu Quan was not afraid. He calmly placed the melons down, bowed his head, and reported clearly, "Your Excellencies, the Yama Kings, this humble one is Liu Quan." by order of the great Tang Emperor, I bring a pair of the first melons of the season from the mortal world to thank you for the virtuous deed of allowing the Emperor to return to life." The 10 kings glanced at each other, a flicker of a satisfied smile appearing on their solemn faces. The Yama King seated in the center nodded, his voice deep and powerful like rolling thunder. "Emperor Taizong is indeed a monarch who keeps his word, a man of virtue and talent. We have taken note of his promise." After the praise, the Yama King looked directly at Liu Quan and asked, "And you, the melon bearer, for what reason would a mortal man voluntarily forsake the world of the living and venture into this place of the 9 springs?" At this, the pain in Liu Quan's heart burst forth. He recounted his story, his voice trembling with emotion. "Your Majesty, I am a citizen from Guangzhou. Due to a small misunderstanding, my wife, Li Quilian, died of grief and resentment, leaving behind 2 young children. I am in extreme pain, filled with endless regret. I abandoned all my wealth and my children to come here, hoping for nothing more than to see my wife's soul one more time, to offer a word of apology." Liu Quan's sincerity moved even the underworld. The Yama King immediately ordered a ghost bailiff to bring Li Quilian's soul. The moment the 2 souls met again in the middle of Senluo Hall, time seemed to stand still. They looked at each other, their eyes holding love, pain, regret, and forgiveness. The reunion had no tears, for in the realm of the dead, all mortal tears had dried up, leaving only profound understanding. Witnessing this scene, the Yama King ordered the adjudicator to check the ledger of life and death. The adjudicator flipped through the enormous book, golden characters appeared, and he reported in astonishment, "Your Excellencies, the fate of Liu Quan and his wife is most special. In the future, both are destined to achieve the way and become immortals." This was a heavenly secret. Because they had roots in spiritual cultivation from past lives, the Yama King decided to grant an unprecedented favor, to allow both souls to return to the mortal world to live out the rest of their lives. But an intractable problem arose. A ghost bailiff reported, "Li Quilian has been dead for over 3 months. Her mortal body has likely decomposed. How can her soul return to it?" Just as the newly sparked hope seemed about to be extinguished, the Yama King made another bold decision. He said, "The lifespan of Li Yuying, the sister of Emperor Taizong of Tang, ends today. Her body is still intact. Let the soul of Li Quilian borrow that body to return to the world." The command was given. The ghost bailiffs immediately led the 2 souls out of the underworld, flying as fast as the wind towards the capital, Chang'an. They brought Liu Quan's soul back to the Golden Pavilion Inn and returned it to the body that still lay there. At the same moment in the imperial garden, Princess Li Yuying was admiring the flowers when the world suddenly began to spin. She collapsed to the ground. Her breathing stopped. In that instant, the ghost bailiff pushed the soul of Li Quilian into the princess's noble body. In the palace, terrified screams rang out. Palace maids ran in a panic to report the news. The princess was dead. But they did not know that a world-shaking miracle had just occurred. The soul of the virtuous wife, Li Quilian, now had a new body, but it was the body of a royal princess. What would happen when she awoke? How could a common woman from Guangzhou survive in the identity of a great Tang princess, and would Liu Quan recognize his wife in a completely unfamiliar form? The terrible news spread like a dark cloud over the capital. Princess Li Yuying, the beautiful flower of the imperial family, had passed away suddenly. Amidst the mournful wails, only Emperor Taizong maintained a strange calm. He remembered the warning from the 10 kings of hell as they saw him off. "Your family is all safe. Only your royal sister's life will not be long." The cruel prophecy had come true, but fate always holds unexpected wonders. As the emperor stepped forward and gently lifted his sister's head, he called softly, "Royal sister, wake up." A miracle happened. The cold body stirred, and a faint breath, as thin as a thread, was restored. She opened her eyes, but her gaze was completely unfamiliar, and her first words stunned everyone present. She pushed the emperor's hand away, her voice filled with the confusion of someone who had just awoken from a dream. "Wait for me. Don't go so fast." "Who is holding me?" Emperor Taizong patiently replied, "It is your royal brother and sister-in-law." But her response was a firm denial. "How am I the king's sister? My surname is Li. My name is Quilian, and I am the wife of Liu Quan from Guangzhou. My husband followed the emperor's order to deliver melons to the underworld, and the Yama king took pity and allowed us to return together. Why do you people dare to keep me here?" The entire court was shaken, believing the princess was speaking deliriously from the shock of her fall. Imperial physicians were summoned, medicines were offered, but she adamantly refused, constantly demanding to return to her husband and children, and complaining that the magnificent chamber was a gaudy yellow room like a gambling den. Just as this most fantastical story was unfolding in the Forbidden Palace, even more shocking news arrived from outside the city. Liu Quan, the melon bearer, had come back to life. Emperor Taizong immediately summoned Liu Quan to court. Before all the civil and military officials, Liu Quan recounted his entire incredible journey. From delivering the melons and being praised by the 10 kings, to the tearful reunion with his wife, and the Yama king's verdict on their shared destiny of becoming immortals. He recounted clearly, "When the adjudicator told us we could return to the world, a ghost bailiff said my wife had been dead for a long time and her body was gone. The Yama king then said she could borrow the body of the Tang royal sister to inhabit." At this, all the scattered pieces of the puzzle fit together perfectly. Emperor Taizong understood everything. This was not an ill omen, but a miracle, an arrangement of fate. He had the princess brought out for a confrontation. As soon as she saw Liu Quan standing bewildered among the court officials, she rushed forward, grabbing his sleeve and scolding him. "Where were you? Rushing off to, you old thing, without waiting for me. You made me trip and fall while chasing you, and then these people held me here and wouldn't let me go." Liu Quan heard his wife's familiar voice and affectionate gestures, and his heart filled with joy. But looking up at the unfamiliar face of the princess, he was utterly bewildered and didn't dare to acknowledge her. Seeing this, Emperor Taizong let out a great laugh and proclaimed, "People have seen the earth collapse and mountains erode, so why have you never heard of a soul changing its body?" He affirmed that this was indeed the soul of Li Quilian in the body of his sister. Because Liu Quan had performed a great service by delivering the melons, heaven and earth had bestowed this strange and fortunate destiny upon them. The emperor decided to grant the entire fortune of the princess to Liu Quan and his wife as a dowry for his sister's marriage, and at the same time exempted them from all taxes and levies. A commoner, after a journey to the land of the dead, had returned not only with his beloved wife, but also with the status and wealth of an imperial son-in-law. The story of Liu Quan and Li Quilian had a happy ending, but the emperor's promise to the underworld remained. While in the netherworld, he had had to borrow a huge sum of money from the treasury of a man named Xiang Liang to bribe the officials and ghosts. Now it was time to repay that spiritual debt. To repay the debt from the underworld, Emperor Taizong sent his most loyal general, Yu Qigong, with vast amounts of gold and silver to Kaifeng Prefecture to find the man named Xiang Liang. After many days of inquiries, the general finally found the residence of the underworld's creditor. It was a dilapidated thatched hut where an old couple, Xiang Liang and Lady Zhang, sold clay pots and delivered water to make a living. They were so poor they were known as the poorest in the prefecture, but their benevolent hearts made them the kindest in the prefecture. Every spare coin they earned, they either gave to charity or used to buy spirit money to burn for the souls of the dead. When Yuchi Gong arrived before the hut with a fortune, the old couple was so terrified they nearly fainted. They prostrated themselves on the ground, trembling and unable to speak. The general quickly helped them up and explained that this was the gold and silver the emperor had borrowed from them in the underworld, and he was now here to repay it in full. But Zhang Liang staunchly refused. The old man stammered, "I have never lent anything to anyone. How could I dare accept this wealth? I do burn spirit money, but that is a sincere offering to the netherworld. If I accept this gold, I fear my meager blessings will turn into a great disaster, and I will not die in peace." The integrity and humility of the poor couple deeply impressed Yu Qigong. He returned and reported everything to the king. Emperor Taizong was not angry, but instead praised them lavishly as truly virtuous people. He understood that a spiritual debt could not be repaid with ordinary material wealth. Therefore, the emperor decided to use all the gold and silver to build a magnificent temple in Kaifeng, naming it the Shanggu Temple, and had statues of the old couple erected inside for veneration, so that their virtuous deeds would be passed down for 10,000 generations. Once the temple was completed, the emperor wished to hold a grand water and land ceremony, lasting 49 days to deliver all vengeful souls from suffering, especially those who had died in the wars. To preside over a national ceremony of this scale, a high monk of perfect talent and virtue was needed. The largest selection process ever seen was held throughout the great Tang Empire. Meanwhile, Guanyin Bodhisattva, after arranging the fate of Liu Quan, knew that the time for the Mahayana scriptures to be transmitted to the east had come. She and Muja transformed into 2 poor, scabby monks and brought a 5-colored kasaya robe and a 9-ringed kakara staff to the capital, Chang'an. She offered the 2 treasures for sale at a heavenly price, making everyone who heard it laugh. But she said that if she met a truly virtuous practitioner, she would give them away for free. Emperor Taizong, through the introduction of Chancellor Xiao Yu, met the 2 strange monks. Seeing the 2 treasures radiating the halo of the Buddha realm, the king knew they were extraordinary, and expressed his wish to buy them to bestow upon the chosen high monk. The 2 monks, seeing the king's reverence for the Buddha, decided to offer the 2 treasures as a gift without taking a single coin, and then quietly departed. Finally, after many days of selection, the high ministers found the most worthy candidate. It was a young monk named Chen Xuanzang. He was the reincarnation of the golden cicada, a disciple of the Buddha who was banished to the mortal world for being late to a meeting. He was born into a high official's family, endured hardship from a young age, and was rescued and raised in a temple by the abbot since he was a baby. Growing up, Xuanzang renounced all fame and fortune, devoted himself to the Buddhist Dharma, became thoroughly versed in the scriptures, and surpassed others in virtue. At the Huaxing Temple, on the opening day of the grand ceremony, witnessed by the king and all his subjects, Xuanzang, wearing the treasured kasaya robe and holding the staff, ascended the Dharma platform. He began to preach the sutras, his voice clear and compassionate, exhorting people to do good and avoid evil. At that very moment, Guanyin Bodhisattva appeared again in the form of a poor monk, walked up, slapped the table, and asked loudly, "You monk, only know how to preach the Hinayana Sutras. Can you preach the Mahayana Sutras?" Xuanzang humbly replied that he had never seen the Mahayana Sutras. Guanyin then said, "The Hinayana Sutras can only save one person. They cannot deliver all sentient beings from suffering. I have the 3 baskets of the Buddha's Mahayana Sutras in the West, which can save people from hardship, deliver the souls of the dead, and help people achieve enlightenment." As she finished speaking, the Bodhisattva and Muja rose into the air on a cloud, revealing their true, radiant forms. The king, his ministers, and the common people were terrified and fell to their knees in unison, chanting the Bodhisattva's name. A card fell from the sky on which was written clearly, "The true scriptures are in the distant land of India, 108,000 miles away. Whoever has the sincere heart to go and fetch them will one day become a golden Buddha." At this moment, Emperor Taizong understood his true mission. He asked the monks, "Who among you dares, for my sake and for the sake of the people of the great Tang, to brave all hardships and journey to the west to fetch the scriptures?" Amidst the silence of thousands of monks, only one voice rang out. Dharma Master Xuanzang knelt and reported, "This humble monk, though untalented, volunteers to go and fetch the true sutras, praying for the eternal stability of our nation and the peace and happiness of all living beings." Emperor Taizong was overjoyed. He went to help Xuanzang up, formed a bond of brotherhood with him, and bestowed upon him a new Dharma name, Sanzang. On the day of his departure, the emperor and all the civil and military officials escorted Sanzang to the city gate. Before parting, the emperor poured a cup of wine, took a pinch of native soil and dropped it in, saying, "It is better to cherish a handful of your own country's soil than to covet 1,000 pounds of another country's gold." Tang Sanzang understood the meaning, drank the cup of wine dry, bid farewell to the emperor, then turned. Alone with his horse, he resolutely headed west. The road of 108,000 miles, filled with demons and monsters, awaited him. A great legend, a journey that would forever change the faith of an entire people, had officially begun.